Welcome to Resilience Talk, hosted by Paul Spencer of Second Nature Solutions. Let's dive in. Hello, Paul, and welcome back to another episode of the Resilience Talk podcast. This will be an interesting one because we are going to talk about negotiation, and there are a lot of ways to discuss that topic. But in light of last episode, we talked about this age of transition that we are entering into and how you can thrive in that age of transition. And you got some feedback, by the way, on that episode that I'm excited to share in the newsletter. But as we're entering into this age of transition, you are making the argument, Paul, that this is not like a previous big cataclysmic event like 2008 and things got hairy for a little while, but more or less we returned to normal soon after.
Yep.
This is a big, hairy, cataclysmic event that we are in this period where it is actually fundamentally changing. It's not an incremental change, it's a categorical change.
Yeah.
It's a big change that we're entering into. And so to create a resilient business within this new age that we're entering into for many different reasons, one of them being tariffs, one of them being technology, there's a number of different events that are happening. Negotiation is a very important part of becoming a resilient business. But you argue it's not just negotiation in sales and around pricing, though that is a big component. It's negotiation around a lot of different things. But I want to start with negotiation as it does relate to the sales and pricing and things like that. Maybe that is a good place to start because you have mentioned that maybe some of your customers are experiencing this kind of you're getting calls of, hey, can you reduce your price by 20% or 50%? Like we're going through this crazy time. And then there's maybe skills around that we can talk about. How do you handle that conversation? So before we get into all of that, can you talk very briefly about how you see negotiation as a component of a resilient business within this age of transition?
Sure, yeah. So negotiating is an input into a resilient business. So regardless if we were going through the age of transition here, right? Normally, we would want to be good negotiators. And I would say probably a lot of you listening are fairly decent at negotiating anyway. But it's going to be even more critical as we go forward. As you mentioned, right, in 2008, it's just an example. If we look backwards, right, it's always easy to look backwards. In 2008 is a pretty big event, and we had a big financial crisis. And for some industries and some businesses, that was more catastrophic than others. And it definitely affected the economy and everything that was going on around us. But it eventually went away, right? It can use air quotes in that. There's lots of side effects that happen because of that, right?
Yes, of course.
But we did get back to essentially normal, and we went on our way, right? And so we could negotiate in that way. So here, just proposing that because we are in this transition period, that it's going to be difficult to understand what will be normal on the back end of this. And maybe it won't be as dramatic as I'm playing it out. Maybe it'll be nearly the same, but likely it's going to be very different. And so because of that, this is where the negotiating aspect comes in to be pretty critical, to be able to understand how I am going to negotiate win-win opportunities with my customers, with my suppliers, with my vendors. And then we also talk about, because we always think about negotiating as a sales tactic, right? Mm-hmm. It's a sales strategy. And yes, it's part of sales. But we also have it in other aspects of our business. We have it internally, right? Mm-hmm. So when we have our executive suite, right? Our leadership team, we are always negotiating with each other on where we're going strategically and what are we going to be working on. And maybe we even have business partners ownership partners. There's negotiation inside there. There could be different business partners where two entities share some kind of product, or maybe they're working together to build a unique product, and there's a partnership as part of that. So anyway, as stakeholders, shareholders, internal customers, external customers, we are constantly negotiating. And it's important that we think of that as a skill that we want to elevate ourselves into. We want to get good at understanding how to negotiate and not to take it in a personal way, and to be able to navigate the give and take of coming to a win-win situation.
Got it. I want to talk about how you actually do that. Like, what are some ways that you think about negotiation for win-win? I know you've got some tips on that, maybe some methodologies. There's a one that you mentioned in a video that you created. But before we get there, you talk about this kind of period that we're in, and some folks feeling this kind of price sensitivity, if you could say. So you've got customers, you got people in your network where their customers are feeling this kind of pressure given the tariff environment, economic environment that we find ourselves in. Talk a little bit about that.
So as always within our business, sometimes it's hard to separate the noise. So we've got the backdrop of the tariffs, and then every article, probably every headline, maybe a month ago, was all about we're going into a recession and the market was crashing and all of that. And then so when you get customers coming to you saying, hey, can we work on the price, your price? Can we cut? We're looking to cut our costs, and you're in that cost bucket. And can we drop 10%? Can we drop 20%? Right? So then we ask ourselves, oh, is that because of what's going on? And we don't know that unless we ask. But that's part of the negotiating is, yeah, that's interesting. I like that, right? It's interesting. You want to cut your cost by 10%, and we're in that bucket. How would you propose we do that? Right? It's a great way of opening up. Or tell me more about the costs and the other types of costs that are in the bucket that we're in. So you're just listening, and then you ask a question based on what they're telling you, and then you don't talk. That's negotiating. Maybe I could write a book on that.
No, this is with your first step in the win-win mindset is listen more than I talk.
Yes, that's right.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because the reason for that is a couple of things. Is the more I listen to you, and the more I respond in a positive way, that I'm listening and that I hear what you're saying, and then the more I ask tell me more questions. Tell me more about that. What does that mean for you? Help me understand how I can help you. And then just let them talk. And the more you do that, the more they feel like they're being listened to. And when they feel like they're being listened to, they're trusting you, right? So we could take it and move it as a comparison, right? Which is a combative position, right? So you, Brandon, may feel that you're the procurement officer at customer X, and now you're calling Paul, who's the owner of whatever, and you're thinking, as soon as I mention this to Paul, he's going to come at me, and he's going to come up with all kinds of excuses why he's not going to drop it not even a dime, right? And so what you do, in part of your preparation with your call with me, you think of all the defensive measures you're going to take, right? So you're putting your guard up, and you're going to you're getting your maybe even your anxiety up about the call, and you're planning to go to battle, right? And when I disarm that by saying, "Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that." Yeah, that's not a fun situation. We've been through this before. What are your expenses? What are you feeling? Is this right? And then you could answer. You could ask lots of different questions just based on what you tell me. I just take a phrase or a couple of words. Tell me more about that. Right? So anyway, I'm building trust, and plus I'm learning more about your situation, so that I can help fashion a win-win opportunity. Right? Without that, we're not going to arrive to a win-win. And what are the other alternatives? Lose-win, meaning I lose, you win, or win-lose, I win, you lose, right? And if we have that kind of deal or an agreement, by the time we're done, then one of us feels not happy about the situation and maybe even taken advantage of, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good, and it wears on our trust with each other. And it wouldn't be surprising that if I was the one who won and you lost, meaning you're my customer, that 6 months from now, you give me a call and say, we found somebody else, we're done, right? You're not even going to ask me for a price cut. You're done, right? Because you've been sore about the situation. Now, negotiating doesn't always mean that you arrive to a win-win and everybody's happy and skipping around. I mean, like, yeah. It's not all of that. But you have to go through the negotiating process in order to be resilient, right? Yeah. If you take that across 5, 6 of your customers that are asking you those types of questions, and you negotiate those deals in an honest win-win way, that has longevity for you. That's a resilient business, as opposed to making sure I hold on to each one of those 5 or 6. I'm going to hold on to as much as I can, and I work those agreements. I'm actually jeopardizing maybe all of them in the short term, right? Definitely in the long term.
I like that distinction, that you would think that in a negotiation like that, you are, let's say, getting more revenue per client, means more cash flow, means more resilience. But what you're arguing is a non-monetary kind of resilience, where that trust that you're building up, or I shouldn't say non-monetary, because it is eventually monetary. Long-term
it's an
relationships
outcome
with trust is a higher outcome. Yeah. Okay.
So if you focus on the money, you have an opportunity to skip the trust building part, right? But if you focus on building trust in a win-win negotiation, then in theory, again, the outcome will be a better monetary situation. Yeah. But also in negotiating, go ahead.
I think there's a proverb that says, wealth gained in haste will soon come to ruin.
Oh, yeah. There you go. That's exactly what we just described.
I like that.
Yeah. So another part of the negotiating is just knowing that we can't get to a win-win. And because of that, then there's probably no reason to have any kind of agreement.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to serve you. It's not going to serve me. And so we'll just separate ways, right? We'll either, if you're a current customer, maybe we'll wind it down. We'll agree to wind it down. Because, again, that may be the win-win, right? Which is, let's just call it quits. Not in a mean way, but we can't get to a place that I can't support your cost-cutting needs because it's not going to work for me in my business and my model. And you can't afford me, essentially, at this point, right? So it's not going to work. That's also a win-win. And then the other cool thing that is about that is, again, you trust me because we came to that conclusion. And then 6 months from now, 4 months from now, I can call you and say, hey, how's it going? And you're like, boy, when you get what you pay for. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Are you ready to kick up some quality and get back into this?
That's right.
Not quite yet. Okay, I'll call you in 3 more months, right? I'll call you in 6 months, right? That's still part of the negotiating, and that's okay, right? Again, just to compare that again, as opposed to you and I holding on as tight as we could on each side and spending that 3 months, that 6 months, just grinding it out and kind of battling each other and maybe even hate each other's guts through that whole process, right? Which then if you think about short-term, long-term, it's highly likely that we're just going to say we're done working with each other and we will never take each other's calls again.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the worst possible outcome.
Yeah, that's lose-lose.
Yeah. You mentioned a part of that is having fun. Have fun with negotiation.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Like, because that resonates with me where, okay, it's not this like this bargaining chip that we're pushing around. Like, it's like, okay, let's be creative. Let's explore other options that we're not even thinking about.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I would say that negotiating is definitely part of sales, but I would say not all sales people are good at negotiating, right? We may say, sales is good at negotiating, but not really. Some are, some are not. And so there's a limiting factor that we put on ourselves, which is, I got to go talk to Brandon about this cost-cutting thing, and I got to work out some kind of new agreement. And it's like, I'm so terrible at this, and I don't like doing it, right? Yeah. So the fun part is saying, this will be fun, right? I'm going to go, I got a call with Brandon this afternoon. I'm going to see what he's up to, right? I'm not excited about the opportunity of cutting my costs by 20%, my costs, right? My price. Yeah. But I am curious of where he's at, and there's an opportunity here, right? And there's an opportunity for us to maybe work in a different way, or for me to understand more about what he's up to. And, he and I haven't really talked in a while, and maybe this is a good opportunity for us to build some more trust. And so negotiating has to be something that you are willing to just throw out there.
Yeah.
This is what I hear you saying, Brandon. Let me throw this out there. Tell me if this is a stupid idea. What if we just went ahead and did the 20% cut, and then in the next 3 months we were able to get back to whole on our side? Well, right? And you may say that, that's never going to work. Or, no, that's not a stupid idea. Well, tell me why, right? And I don't know if you're going to say it's stupid or not, but I might as well throw it out there. And if I don't, right? If I do, and you say, no, that's not a stupid idea, why? Well, because in 3 months things will change, and we'll probably be whatever, right? Whatever the narrative is. And then now we have a win-win. I can get you a price cut for a few months until you get your things in order, and then we'll go back to normal business, right? So, but you have to be willing to throw ideas out there and be like, let's have fun with it and see what we get, right? That's the fun part.
It reminds me of, I use the phrase like, let's just figure this out. Like, this is, we can do this. We can figure this out. Let's put it all out on the table. And I like doing that up front, because invariably when you're in a conversation, sometimes it's an hour-long call. You don't get to that real like nitty-gritty part of the conversation sometimes until like 45 minutes into the call. And then you've got 15 minutes to kind of work out this. So just start the call like, hey, look, let's try to figure this out. Let's be creative about this option.
Yeah.
But what I hear you say is almost like focus on the human being behind the relationship or the business deal or whatever, where it's like, I just want to hear what Paul's up to. Like, I just want to figure out, like, he has needs, I have needs. Let's talk about this. I care about you as a person, And so I hear that part of it, which I think is really great too. Like, I care about you as a person, and I want to hear, how can we serve each other,
Yes. I think of it in that way. But I mean, you and I may not know each other, right? And we both have our assumptions about each other, and we know in our own companies what we talk about each other, right? So you have a true or not opinion and stereotype of my company and
Fair, yeah.
and my company does with you, right? And we talk about you and your services and what you're up to and whether you're easy to work with or not, right? So those things are all part of the negotiating, right? We have to understand that, and we have to really know whether those are true or not, right? Whether there's assumptions, and then the only way you're going to work on making some kind of agreement is by talking to each other.
Yeah, right.
And then just to your point, that's a human thing. And if we get irritated or if you don't treat me well or if you're arrogant about it, that's going to make the negotiation even harder.
Yeah, yeah. So in the last few minutes here, I want to cover some, like, you've got a section of this article that you wrote about practical tips. So again, entering into this age of transition, things look very different. There's a lot of negotiation that's going to be happening in the future. And so you've got these 5 tips. We've covered some of them, but essentially, number 1 is practice reflective listening, and then know who you're talking to. Take breaks when emotions run high, speaking to the human side of things. Consider the relationship value, thinking long-term, not short-term, and then be creative with the terms. So we kind of covered those, but one I don't think we really talked about was know who you're talking to. So some part of the negotiations, the first step, you mentioned like the Sandler sales methodology, is know who you're talking to. Are you the buyer? Do you have budget? Are you the buyer? Are you the decision maker? Can you help me with this? That kind of thing. So talk to me. So in those 5, tips, that number 2 seems pretty important.
So it depends on the makeup of who you're dealing with, meaning the business. So let's say it's a customer, and you get a call from the customer, and they say, "We need to cut." We'll just keep using the prices analogy. Well, we need to cut prices, your cost, our costs by 15%, and then so then you schedule a call with that person. You need to understand who that person is. And is it them that's figuring out what the cost is? Did they figure out the 15%, or were they told the 15%? How did they arrive to the 15%? What is their thinking about a 15% versus a 20% versus a 10%? Those are all the things that you need to know, the makeup of that person. What's their role? Because a lot of times that person making that call is maybe a procurement officer, right? Or maybe an inventory manager, or maybe a VP of some sort, maybe a VP of operations or client services, vendor management, right? They may be being told that number and go figure this out with Paul, and they don't really know maybe much of the background, or maybe they may know the background, but they don't have any authority to negotiate, right? So for you to be able to have the conversation, you have to know where Brandon is. And if I don't know, that's one of the first things I'm going to ask is, how did you arrive at the 15%? And I just, right? And I let you talk. And normally, whether you really know or not, I can just tell by the way you answer the question, right? And your body language and all that. Hopefully you can do it in person, or you can do it on a Zoom call, right? And then if you get a sense that maybe you were told the 15%, then I may ask some questions based on what your answer is. Well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Well, are you aware that that is not related to the service that we provide? Actually, our service will make that better for you. If you take our service away, that'll make that one thing actually worse, which will cost you even more money. Right? So anyway, if you're having that conversation and this person is not in the influential realm, then you need to change the negotiation. It's not a negotiation at that point about the cost cut.
Yeah.
It's a negotiation about how we can work together to get in the same room with the person who told you to make the 15% cut, right? Because it's only at that point that I, Paul, can make a negotiating win-win proposal, right?
That's right.
Because in the end, the only way that this is going to end up is you win, I lose. Because you are given this 15% cut, probably some different criteria, right? You're not going to negotiate on it. And no matter what I say or do with you as part of my negotiating, you don't have the authority to say yes or no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the only opportunity I have is to say, take the deal or not,
Yeah.
right? So I can't win. There's no win-win in that situation. So there's no point on me even having the conversation. I can have the conversation to learn more about it, but eventually I need to learn how do I negotiate to the stakeholder, the highest stakeholder that we can have a conversation so that we can get to the win-win.
What this reminds me of is I have listened to a lot of Charlie Munger in my day.
Okay,
So
yes.
Charlie Munger is a business partner of Warren Buffett.
Yeah, for sure,
Late
yeah.
business partner, a legend. He would always say that the number one thing you can learn in business was psychology. And he said if he could go back and if he could study one thing, it would be psychology. And everything you're describing is that in these negotiation conversations, it is so human, psychological.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on in there.
Yes.
With those conversations. There's obviously that you need to know your business and margins and what you can do and not do and all that sort of thing. But there's just so much psychology in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So Deming, the Deming system of profound knowledge, which is a core thing that we use when we're thinking about our businesses. One of those is psychology. And so you have awareness of the system, right? You understand variation, you understand theory of knowledge, and then you understand psychology. And because you may have systems, like what we've talked about, processes in place, but you have to also understand psychology and the people that are running the systems.
That's right.
Because everything that we just talked just now about negotiating and developing a win-win opportunity or agreement with our customer is a process. And in that case, it's super critical you understand psychology in order for that process to work. Right? We're not in the furniture making process where you just need to know how to operate the gun in the mill, right?
Yeah.
The drill in the mill, right? Here I have to understand how you work as a human, and then I also have to understand how you work as a person, as an individual, and the things, what your role is, right? And how you think about things, and are you willing to negotiate, and right, all those things in order to get to a win-win. You have to, otherwise you're not gonna succeed in a win-win.
Thank you for my monthly reminder that I need to study Deming in the system of profound knowledge.
There you go.
Because I
Yes.
feel like every time I talk to you, it's like, no, this is a system. Go back, like to go to first principles. Think about
Yeah.
this in totality.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah, I think I know we talked about this at the beginning, but everything we just talked about is a normal input, a normal process for a resilient business. It's what we do, right? It's how we operate. So if you don't feel like you would score yourself as high in negotiating, either internal or external, then it's something to work on. It's something to be thinking about. And there's so many things out there to learn on negotiating. There's so many things out there, and just by touching it just a little bit, you'll improve, right? But the main point of our conversation is that it's going to be hypercritical that you understand psychology and you understand your negotiating process, because there are going to be a lot of things shifting. And people are going to be finding their partners, and it's like when you were a school kid, right? And we're picking dodgeball teams. If you don't make your kickball teams, right? And if you don't make your pick, if you don't move fast, right? You're like,
Yep.
Jeez.
Yep.
So you want to be able to have the skill and the presence to be able to make these agreements and to be able to move constantly on your negotiating, because it's going to be necessary.
That's right.
Yeah.
It seems like everything's off the table for the next period. 10
Yeah.
years, I don't know, whatever it might look
Yeah,
like.
we don't know what the time frame is, but again, if you're going back to the fun aspect,
Yeah.
and just to go back, this is not to be flippant about the seriousness of running the business, right?
Course,
and
yeah.
having employees, and
We're all
and the
feeling
customer
it, yeah.
comes back for 20%, and that's going to be a big disruption to our business and to our financials and all that. Yes, of course. However, if we can still be fun with our negotiating and we can get improvement into our skills on what that process looks like, right? Then we improve and we elevate. And it only sets us up for more success and more success. And there may be a time where what our business is doing today is completely different than what we're going to be doing it in 6 years.
Yeah.
Because we naturally, as a resilient business, shifted and pivoted and did our feedback loops and negotiated, and we ended up into optimal, right? And our business is now operating, thriving, because we didn't just sit here and try to figure out how we get this thing to work, right?
That's right.
And that's the negotiating, again, is just an important input into being successful in a turbulent time. Unpredictable time, probably is a better way of saying it.
Amen. I'll close with that, because that's exactly right. And it's something I definitely could get better at. So thank you, as always, for your wisdom and expertise. Well, that'll do it. Paul, we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Talk soon.
Thank you. Yep. Bye.